What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations. What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Also know that I'm a certified empowerment coach and president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And as always, realize that this is the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. And you know that I always like having new friends come on the Dr. Vibe Show, and we have another gentleman who's joining us tonight. I believe he's based in California. I think he asked me before we went live where. Yeah, there we go. He asked me before I went live where I'm based out of, so I'll tell him now we're on the live stream. I'm based out of Toronto. So there you go. So our new friend is Jay Connor. He's a Los Angeles-based writer, consultant, and founder of the popular, very popular podcast, The Extraordinary Negroes. In his bio says, which you should subscribe to post haste, so go subscribe after you watch this conversation. His work has been featured in prestigious outlets such as the New York Times, The Root, Huffington Post, South by Southwest, Very Smart Brothers, Afropunk, Creators of Color, the AMC Network, CBS All Access, Black Card Revoked, and many others. Outside of his creative pursuits, Jay uses his multimedia platform to celebrate the accomplishments, opinions, and agency of marginalized groups, in addition to actively combating justice and destigmatization of mental illness. He is joining us live tonight to talk about an outstanding article that he wrote on the Huffington Post called Strong Black Men Are Victims of Assault Too. So welcome to the Dr. Vibe Show from the first time and not the last time, Mr. Jay Connor. What is up, Jay?
What's good? What's good? What's good? Thank you for coming through. Yo, that bio was impressive, man. I don't know who that was.
Oh, stop it. Stop your noise. It wasn't me, my brother. It wasn't me. So you just relax there. And for anyone who's watching this live, we're streaming live on YouTube Live and on Periscope. So if you have any questions on Periscope, send them to me. If you have any questions on YouTube, send them to me. So, Jay, the first time we have friends come on the show, we got that impressive bio, but can we find out a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, life growing up when you were a young Jay, not the Jay you are now?
Well, I have an interesting upbringing. I was born in New York in the Bronx. I spent about 10 years out there. My family decided that they wanted a better life for us, so we relocated to, of all places, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was a bit of a culture shock, as you would imagine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we went from the Bronx, we went from like the hood to like the farm. So, yeah, we went from the Bronx to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lived there from about like 10 to about like 19. And so that's what I consider Tulsa home. I have a lot of love for New York. I go back occasionally, but I definitely consider Tulsa home. That's definitely where I grew up to become the individual I am today.
So let me ask, at what age did you move from New York to Tulsa?
Around like 10 years old, about 9, 10 years old.
Do you remember making that move, and were you any resilient of making that move?
I think at that age, you're receptive to just about anything. I don't really feel like I had like strong enough roots to where like I felt like I necessarily had like a, an attachment to New York. But I mean, I definitely remember moving to Tulsa and being like, whoa, this is like the polar opposite of what New York is. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, you go from, like I said, skyscrapers to tractors. So it was crazy. But I'm definitely grateful that I grew up in a smaller city. I still made some poor decisions in my formative years, but I'm glad I was in a position to rectify them and eventually go into the military and whatever else. So,
well, okay, so let me ask then. Obviously, the number of people of color probably differed a little bit from New York and Tulsa. So, how did you make that adjustment, and how did you handle that adjustment?
Honestly, I think that that's one thing that people get misconstrued about Tulsa is that clearly there's a much larger black and or people of color demographic in New York, but it's like Tulsa is a very religious city. And we spent a lot of time in church. My parents were, my dad was a pastor. My mom was like a motivational speaker, and she did a lot of like counseling in the church. So we spent a lot of time in the church. So everywhere I went was black people. You know what I mean? Like, except for when I was in school. School was about literally the only time where I felt like a minority. Outside of that, we were constantly around black people all the time, and who we hung out with, who we were around, who we spent time with, who we drove around and saw. So it wasn't really, if anything, if anything, it's more of a difference now living in LA than it was, growing up in Tulsa, because we were constantly around each other.
Yeah, and that's interesting because one would think off the top of their head, not knowing a lot, that you wouldn't find too many people of color in Tulsa, but it sounds like it was a comfortable environment for you to grow up in.
Yeah, it was super cool, man. I definitely had like some challenges in the school system as far as just not really feeling like I belong. But like I said, outside of that, definitely felt like there wasn't a big disparity in as far as race goes.
Okay. And what was life growing up in the school system? Was school easy for you? Was it challenging? Was it something you adapted to? Did I ask an interesting question?
Yeah, man. No, I'm just laughing because school isn't something that I was ever fond of growing up. When it came to school, I was terrible at it, and it was primarily a byproduct of a lack of motivation. I was somebody who I was always seen as like a gifted student, and my teachers would tell my parents like, "Yo, you have a very educated, very smart child. You need to put him in like the gifted programs," but they never did. So I was just super bored. So as a result of that, I was just failing classes because I just did not care. You know what I'm saying? So I was just failing classes, constantly in trouble at school, constantly going to night school, barely graduated because I was just like, I just didn't care. So that's why I find it funny that that you asked about the school situation, just because now I'm very big on education. I'm big on helping people out. I'm big on helping children not make the mistakes that I made. But most importantly, I'm big on, as a byproduct of my own experience, and that like parents need to make sure that we provide the right resources so that children can thrive, because you never know where that's going to put them at in the future. Because I mean, if I was challenged and I was put in a position to excel, who knows where I would be today, as opposed to feeling like I basically had to be self-sufficient. And had I not gone in the military and kind of skipped the line, I wouldn't have had a lot of the education and other things that I was able to take advantage of, especially being a person of color.
You mentioned going into the military. What prompted that decision?
Basically, I didn't have any options. You know what I'm saying? Like school was not a thing for me. Like I said, I literally barely graduated. So I knew I didn't want to go to school, and you tell your homeboys like, "Yo, I'm not going to school. I'm not doing this. I'm not messing with this." And they're all like, "Yeah, we all gonna hang out and shoot hoops and do all this other stuff, and it's gonna be dope and yada blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Okay, bet. Yeah, we're not going to college. We grown." And then like that summer after we graduated, everybody left for college. So I was out there by myself. So I was like, "Dang, what am I supposed to do now?" So I got this little whack job working at Walgreens. Shout out to Walgreens. Working in the photo lab, and I did that for like a year, and I was like, "Yo, this is lame. I'm walking to work. I'm walking everywhere. I ain't got no car. I'm making like $8 an hour. This could not be my life." You know what I mean? Like, I have so much more to offer the world. I don't want to be like this lame dude that, is stuck in Walgreens forever. And I just thought, like, I've always been somebody who kind of like, I never want to I'm big on taking the road less traveled. I'm big on, throwing caution to the wind and risking it all. And I was just like, what can I do that'll kind of put me in a position to succeed, and kind of skip the line, because everybody else is going to go to college. So I was like talking to my mom, and she was like, "Well, maybe we can do the military thing, because they'll pay for you to go to school. And on top of that, by the time you get out, you'll be ahead of everybody else, because on top of having your education, you'll have the work experience." So I was like, "Okay, well, I'm really not trying to get shot and die, but, let's see what they talking about." So we had the different branches come to the crib, and each of them made their pitches. And I remember thinking, like, my mom was kind of sitting there asking him questions, and I remember like every time we got towards the end, I was like, "So what is the likelihood of me like going to war and getting shot?" Because that is a big factor into this. Because I'm not about that action. You know what I'm saying? But I really like what the Air Force was talking about, and so that's what we decided to go with. So I was in the military for 4 years.
So two things. How did your parents handle your deciding to go to the military, and what valuable lessons did you learn from the military that you carry on today?
You said the first question was how did they feel about it?
Yeah.
How they felt about it is my mom was gung-ho. She was like, "Yo, you need to get out this house. So you can take the spot, have a nice life. Arrivederci. You know what I'm saying? I'll pack your bag." And my dad was kind of like, you're a man now, do what you need to do, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, they were pretty cool about it until it was time for me to leave. Then all of a sudden, your mom switched up and she's all like, "I love you. You're my baby boy. You're my first to go." Because I got a little sister, so I was the first one. But as far as what I took from the military, it definitely gave me a sense of understanding what it took to be an adult. Definitely, it was a great way to transition into adulthood, because I think a lot of times people are so pressed to move out the house. Like you feel like you're 18, 19, you're just like, yo, I got to get up out my mama's crib. I'm just trying to, live my best life and, feel the world out. And a lot of times we're so pressed to do that we don't put ourselves in a position to succeed beforehand. And I'm definitely grateful that the military gave me a lot of those tools, basically like a cheat sheet of things that I, could apply to my everyday life and move forward with, as opposed to just, graduating college and wilding out. Because, you hear so many stories about kids in college acting a fool and, all this other stuff. But it's like having that structure really helped me like move forward in life, as far as like understanding like how to best, organize certain things and go about things a certain way, and having a understanding of like a sense of responsibility, and just really taking yourself seriously when you need to. And understanding, and especially as a person of color, understanding, your responsibility to your community and everything else. So I am grateful for the lessons that I learned, and, the fact that I was able to, attain a lifetime of military benefits that still are valuable to this day, whether it's home loans or whatever else. But if I could do it again, I absolutely would not do it.
Okay. So when did writing become part of your journey?
Writing became a part of my journey around, I would say, I've always been a writer, but when I really started going like balls out and really trying to make it happen, I would say probably around like 2000. Well, I was freelance around 2010, but when I really started to put my foot in it was around 2013, 2014, when I decided to pursue it full time, when I moved out to LA, which was in 2014. So I saved up a bunch of money. Before that, I was doing social work, and I was really just, burned out and just really tired with everything that was going on in that space after doing that for like 8 years. And I just saved up a bunch of money. I kind of accepted my fate, is what I like to tell people, that I knew I was always a creative, but I was always kind of afraid to pursue it. So I just really decided like, yo, if I'm gonna make it happen, I got to make it happen, and I got to move to LA to make it, make things happen. So I moved out here, and thankfully things worked out pretty fast for me. I came out here with a plan, and I executed it, and things just started coming together.
In your writing journey, when you went to LA, what would you consider your first big break?
My first big break was working on a show for the AMC network. I would say that that's probably my first big break. I did some freelance stuff beforehand, but as far as like the big, like, oh, okay, that's going on the resume, is working on the show Strange Angel for the AMC network, and doing some stuff in development over there beforehand. I would definitely say that that's my big break, and I think it was a great experience. But at the same time, it kind of taught me that like that it's so much more difficult for people of color within the entertainment space. Shout out to everybody who I worked with on the show, as far as the fellow writers in the writers' room. But I just remember feeling a sense of like isolation every time I went there, just because like everybody else, I mean, they were great folks. They were super cool people. Shout out to Dave and everybody else over there. But it was just like, when you're the only, really the only person of color in the room, a lot of times you just feel inherently ostracized. And it's not like they don't necessarily feel like, it's not like they didn't go out their way to try to be cool with me, but there's just certain things that they just don't relate to and I don't relate to. And it's hard for us to like kind of get on the same page. So, I mean, it wasn't like we had any issues or anything like that, but it was just a matter of just comfortability. And you just get to a point where you just get to work and you're just like, man, like you just get tired of feeling like you're the other. And I think a lot of people out there feel that same way as far as like, and they go to their 9-to-5s and they feel like they're the one black person in their office. And it's not an indictment on their coworkers. They just don't feel like they fit in. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And that was a big experience of mine. And I just remember like after that was done, I remember thinking like, if I ever work on another, TV show, I'm never going to feel like this again. You know what I'm saying? And if anything, that made me decide to really pursue creating my own opportunities, such as the podcast and things of that nature, so that I can control the narrative and kind of create communities around our gifts and talents.
You mentioned the podcast. I might as well talk about it before we get right into the article. How did the Extraordinary Negroes podcast come to be?
How it came to be is early 2016. Me and my co-host Alex Hardy, we've known each other for like 8-9 years through our writing exploits. Between our writing exploits and social media, we became like super cool. And I remember I had an idea for a podcast because as a writer, my train of thought was, what's the easiest way for me to get the writing jobs that I want? And I looked at people that were getting like whatever jobs they wanted, and every single last one of them were like media personalities or had this kind of cachet and this popularity to where they can do whatever it is that they wanted to do. So I thought, if I make myself popping, I can get any writing job I want. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, the easiest way to make myself pop is probably to pursue the podcast space, because that's something that I can control. It's something I can create, something I can edit, something I can put out, something I can really, put behind. And so in having this idea, I was thinking like, dang, who would be like a really good co-host? And so like a jerk, I went on Facebook and I tagged Alex and I was like, yo, I would really love to do I would really love to do a podcast with Alex. Do you think he would do it with me? And then like everybody started like commenting, being like, oh, that'd be so dope if you guys did this together. So yeah, instead of like calling him or just texting him like a jerk, I literally tagged him on my Facebook page. And it got a bunch of like comments or whatever, and then we hopped on the phone like I think like later that night, and I told him about my idea, and he was with it, and we just ran with it, and it blew up. So we've been very fortunate about that.
What do you feel and it's so nice to see another man of color who's doing podcasting. I've done it for a long time myself. What do you feel has made it so successful in the short period of time it's been in existence, that podcast?
Podcasting in general or our show?
No, your show.
Oh, okay. I think what resonates with people is the fact that we give them substance. I like to call it intellectual entertainment. That we, kind of like in the spirit of like, shout out to our homeboys, Damon and Panama over at Very Smart Brothers. You can give people like substance, but you can be like funny and be like entertaining at the same way. And I think a lot of times we get it misconstrued in that like either you have to be serious or you have to be over here keying. And me and Alex are just naturally like funny guys, but we are definitely, cognizant of our surroundings and the world around us. And we just wanted to create a bridge between the two. And I think that that's what made it, such a success, such an immediate success. In that we were able to bridge the two, and it really just resonated with people.
Nice. Well, let's get to the article. Strong Black Men are victims of assault too. Why did you write this article?
Well, first and foremost, I hate that headline. I didn't come up with it. Shout out to
Interesting. Well, were you a victim of a title assassination?
I wouldn't call it title assassination, but it's definitely title assassination. No, I mean, just in the writing industry, like editors, they dictate the headline of the story. And in seeing the headline, I was afraid that people would feel like I was detracting away from Me Too. And that wasn't the intent. As somebody who obviously read it, that wasn't the intent of the article at all. You know what I'm saying? So that when I saw that headline, I was like, I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to take away from that. You know what I mean? But I'm sorry, what was your original question though?
No, what was the reason why you wrote this article at this time?
Oh, what made me write it at this time was in hearing the story of Terry Cruz, and reading about that, and I was really I mean, like everybody else, I thought it was a fascinating story, but I was more so disgusted in the way that the black community in general and men specifically reacted to it. I saw a lot of people online talking about like, oh, he's gay, and a real man wouldn't allow that to happen to him. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, these are things that happen every day. A lot of times men are in a position in which they don't feel comfortable talking about it. So considering that I have the platform I have, and I'm lucky that people will at least hear me out, whether they agree with me or not, they'll at least hear me out to hear what it is that I have to say. I wanted to, be responsible with that platform and write, a nice piece about it. And shout out to Huffington Post for rolling with it. And yeah, that's kind of the impetus of why I came up with it, or why I wrote about it.
Was it a hard article for you to write? And also, had you written anything like this before?
I write a lot of, I mean, it's funny because I write a lot of, even though like I tend to be kind of lighthearted, I write a lot of serious stuff. Whether, I did something over at Afropunk that was about, anxiety within the black community. But no, I wouldn't say it was a difficult thing to write about. If anything, it's a difficult thing to articulate because you have to be careful in how you say certain things, because if you're a little bit too blunt, people don't want to hear it. If you're a little bit too raw, people don't want to hear it. So it's a matter of kind of finessing it, the premise of the article in a way in which you feel like it's going to resonate with your audience and people are going to be receptive to it. You know what I'm saying? So if anything, that was the biggest challenge in trying to articulate my thoughts and opinions on the matter in a way that I felt like people would say, you know what? I agree with where this is going, and I need to do a better job of checking that. And I think it's the same way in how we deal with, patriarchy and toxic masculinity and other issues of that nature. It's not always about the intent. It's about the verbiage. You know what I'm saying? And regardless of how people feel about the matter, if you don't articulate it in a way that will resonate with them, they're going to dismiss it. And I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that people just brushed aside like, oh, man, like, that don't happen to us. I'm not trying to hear that. You know what I'm saying?
Let me ask, and maybe for people who are not familiar with the incident with Terry Cruz, can you give a little context, a little background before we go any further? Because some people may not even know I know who Terry Cruz is. I've seen him live. I've seen him speak about this, but just to make sure everyone has an understanding.
Yeah, Terry Cruz is a actor, American actor, obviously, who has had a level of success, and to the point where I would say he's pretty popular actor. And he was at a party with his wife, and a gentleman by the name of Adam Bennett groped him and tried to play it off like it was a joke and, key or whatever about it. And Terry was just, highly offended and pissed off and wanted to put hands on him. But he knew if he did, the headline wouldn't have been that he was sexually assaulted. The headline would have been, he beat the brakes off this dude. So Terry kind of sat in silence with it for a while until the whole Me Too thing came about. And then he finally had the courage to come forward and come clean about what happened. And unfortunately, the offending gentleman, that's another thing I explore in the article. The offending party was suspended for 30 days, but he was allowed to go back to work. And it's just like, that's another deterrent of men coming forward too, is that a lot of times the infrastructures in place that are supposed to penalize people for behaving in this manner, they treat women assault that occurs on women different than they would a man assaulting another man. You know what I'm saying? Because there's not a chance in hell dude would have came back in 30 days if that was a woman that this happened to.
True, definitely. When you some of the research that you cite in your article, did it surprise you? Like one of the things you state in the article, 2017 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention report asserts that 1 in 6 men has experienced some form of sexual violence during their lifetime, with 14% of men experiencing sexual assault before the age of 18. Were you surprised by those statistics at all?
No, just because I see how toxic masculinity and hyper masculinity and elements of those have kind of contaminated our community, and I know that a lot of times that's a byproduct of trying to overcompensate for the pain that they've dealt with. You know what I'm saying? I'm not to say that that is the sole reason why those factors exist within our community, but they're definitely a contributing factor. There's a lot of men out there that are operating from their wounds and operating from their pain, and as a result, they're hurting and harming other people and exacting power over them. So no, I wasn't surprised at all.
Well,
if anything, I thought it would have been higher.
There you go. Just want to shout out one of the friends of the Dr. Vibe Show. This is Eileen, is joining on via Periscope. Hey, what is up? This is Eileen. Thank you so much for stopping by. I want to drill down and spend most of the rest of our conversation talking about how the Black community addresses or doesn't address this. And from what your standpoint and from where you wrote the article, how does the Black community approach this, good, bad, or ugly, this subject? What have you experienced, and also what does your research cite out in regards to this subject?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times is that whether it's medical issues or, sexual assault issues in this manner, I think a lot of times we feel a sense of, well, one, we might rely on, like, let's pray about it. We might be over-reliant on, religion to resolve our issues as opposed to really getting to the meat of an issue. You know what I'm saying? And also, I think a lot of times we have a situation in which we live in a country in which there's a disproportionately ugly dynamic in regard to how we interact with police. And a lot of times we don't want to go to the police because we're afraid of the repercussions of those actions, whether they're deserved or not. And it's like, I know Bobby put hands on Charlie, but I don't want to bring Bobby to the police because I don't know what the police are going to do to Charlie. You know what I'm saying? So I think we kind of overprotect ourselves. And like I said, in some instances, we overprotect ourselves so much that we overcompensate and feel like we have to be, big, strong men. And I talk about that in the article as well. Is like, there's this the spirit that we have to, that men are taught to be strong. Men are taught to be protectors. Men are taught to be providers. Men aren't taught to, it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be, quote unquote, weak or vulnerable. You know what I mean? And it's like, when we're conditioned in this manner, we create these kind of factors and dynamics within our community that are unhealthy, and they manifest in a myriad of ways.
And it's true, especially speaking from both of us being men of color, that is so prominent in our culture that we have to be strong and tough at all costs.
Word. Yeah, word.
At all costs. And what do you feel are the root causes of that still existing today when all around us it's not the best policy?
I mean, I think a big contributing factor to it is the systemic oppression that we face. You know what I mean? Like, we're always in a constant cycle of either incurring racism, healing from racism, or being paranoid that it's about to occur. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're always in one of those three cycles. And I think part of that kind of stems from that a little bit, as far as just how men feel like they have to protect themselves from this boogeyman that's constantly around. You know what I'm saying? And it's like a lot of times we're afraid to show weakness, and we feel like we have to protect each other or protect our community and protect, whoever else. But we end up doing a disservice, and it ends up being detrimental to ourselves.
Okay. When you hear the phrase "strong Black men," what is your reaction?
That's a great question. When I hear the phrase "strong Black men," I feel almost like it's like a trap. I feel like strength. I feel like strength is. I feel like there's so many different facets to strength that a lot of times those facets don't always get their aren't always prominent. They're not always celebrated. I think that a lot of times we have what we perceive to be strength, which is a visual idea of what it is, and if we don't match that, then we're not strong. You know what I mean? Like, if I hug my son and I start crying, somebody might view that as weakness, like, oh, you're soft. But it's like, no, the most strongest thing I can do is show vulnerability to my son. You know what I mean?
Okay. Were you, in growing up, were you given good examples of masculinity?
I like this thing. I like to think so. I think that, my dad held it down. He was a great dude. He definitely was a provider, but at the same time, he was a classic example of the quintessential strong black man. He was a provider. He made sure the lights was on. He made sure everything was taken care of. But on a personal level, he and I never really had a personal relationship. You know what I'm saying? Like, my mom was the one that taught me how to drive. My mom was the one that taught me a lot of things. Mom was the one that I had like the actual deep rapport with. My dad was just the dude that paid the bills. You know what I'm saying? And I think that a lot of times, not necessarily to that extent, but a lot of times we have dynamics where we are taught how to be a man from a man who doesn't know how to be vulnerable. And I know in my dad's case, to no fault of his own, he never had a relationship with his dad, so we never had an example of how to be a father. Not to say that he couldn't have did a better job, but I mean, I think it's, it becomes a generational issue. Right. And it's like you have to be cognizant of what's going on and make a concerted effort to make that change. Otherwise, you're just going to repeat the behavior and pass it down to your child.
Has the relationship changed in any sort of way with yourself and your father over the years?
No.
Okay, no.
My dad is cool, but I mean, like, I don't really look at my dad. I mean, it's kind of a jacked up thing to say, but it's like, I don't really look at my dad as like a father. I look at my dad as like the guy who's older than me and knows a lot more than I do. You know what I mean? Like, this is not somebody who's like, hey, son, I have advice for you. Hey, son, I have guidance for you. Hey, son, what do you need? What can I help you with? Like, and I mean, part of that stems from the fact that, like, we didn't have a relationship for like 13 years after he and my mom divorced. I just shut him out completely. But I got to a point where I had to let that go. But nah, we definitely don't have an active relationship in that manner at all, unfortunately.
Sorry to hear about that, but hopefully it'll turn around one day. Hopefully. You gotta have hope. Hope.
Let us hope and pray.
Well, I'm not saying it in that context. I'm just saying just naturally in that context. Then let me ask, where do you feel most black men, rightly or wrongly, are getting their strength from?
Black women. I mean, I think that, black women are the foundation of our community. You know what I'm saying? I mean, one of the things I always like to say, and I can't remember the exact quote because it was hilarious, but I'll give you the loose terms. It's just like, behind every strong black man is a stronger black woman. You know what I mean? That's just real. Like, women are conditioned to, even when we're wrong, even when we're dead wrong, women are conditioned to protect our egos. If I'm in a club and I smack a woman on the butt, I'm trying to watch my language. So I don't know if you cuss on there.
No, we don't.
A woman on the butt. I slap a woman on the butt, and even though I'm dead wrong, she's going to turn around, look at me, and still be like, oh, ha ha, please don't do that, as opposed to cussing me out. You know what I mean? Like, women are conditioned to constantly sacrifice and put us first. And that's where a lot of men draw our strength from, for good or, for better or for worse. And that's also why we feel like we have dominion over them in certain instances, and how you have examples of misogynoir and misogyny, which is geared towards black women, is misogynoir, and misogynoir or hypermasculinity and things of that nature.
What have been some of the downsides of black men being victims of assault that you've seen?
I think as far as the downsides, it contaminates the entire community. I mean, you have men that are walking around with these issues, and they manifest in a bunch of different ways. But, outside of that, when I as a man feel like my manhood is attacked, and I feel like I have to overcompensate for what occurred to me, and I don't heal properly, I don't seek out therapy, I don't have a community of men to support me, and I feel like I have to hide that vulnerability from them, I end up taking that out on women. You know what I mean? Like, I start demeaning them. I start making them feel bad, because I feel like, well, at least there's somebody that feels worse off than me. At least there's somebody that I'm stronger than. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. All right. What has been the reaction to this article?
It's been mixed. For people that are familiar with our show and, topics of this nature, they're definitely like, yo, this is great. this is something that definitely needs to be addressed. There's been plenty of men, kind of like how I say in the article, in that, you know, when Kid Cudi came out and said that he had issues with mental health, there was like this deluge of black men that came out, and, you know, they put out the "You Good Man" hashtag, and it was really dope to see so many black men be open and honest about their struggles with mental health, and that's definitely something we do on our show as well. But when Terry came out, nobody said anything. You know what I mean? Like, Terry was was on an island on his own. Like, there wasn't a deluge of us like, yo, this has happened to me too. And what can we do to heal? What can, or even people being like, yo, this is messed up, Terry. Like, how can we help you? Or, you know, like provide like a refuge, like a sanctuary of sorts. There wasn't that. So, I forgot the question.
No, just it's okay. No, just the reaction to the article, and you were just saying that.
Oh yeah.
There's the people who are following your podcast were very for it, but then the people who are not liking the article or pushing back. What are they giving their reasons for pushing back?
A lot of times it's just as simple as just like, you know, like this is trash because like you trying to make men look soft, and like only, you know, somebody that's gay would, you know, say something like that. You must be, you know, a homosexual, or which I don't even understand, but you know, there's just that natural reaction to kind of adhere to these antiquated laws of strong masculinity, and like you're not allowed to be vulnerable. And if anything, I'm trying to tell people like, hey, this happens. It's okay for us to be vulnerable. That's literally the premise of the article. I have recommendations for how we should go about dealing with that vulnerability, but for the most part, it's a matter of like, hey, we need to do better at addressing this as a community, myself included. What do we need to do? And I think a lot of people are just so resistant to change and confronting this issue that it's easier for them to dismiss it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like gaslighting. As long as I don't acknowledge what it is, then I get to withhold the power. You know what I'm saying? If I slap you in the face and you're like, why you slap me? And I'd be like, what are you talking about? You're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I don't have to feel guilty. It's the same thing. You know what I mean?
With those that have pushed back against the article, and you may not know this, but I'm just going to put it out there. Do you see more pushback from older than younger? And is there more pushback from male more than female?
I don't know about the age breakdown, but definitely more pushback gender-wise as far as men. Definitely way more men. I don't really think I've heard any woman say anything negative about it. But I mean, definitely anything that was said negative was a guy. It definitely came from a black man, or it came from a man who was just like, yo, like, you're bugging. This is BS. What are you talking about? Like, so yeah, it's definitely 100% male denial.
When you see that denial and pushback, how does that make you feel, and what does it tell you what's going on out there?
It's disheartening, but I mean, if anything, that just tells me that we just need to work harder at it. Because the onus fault, I'm a big proponent of, just because, you know, so often people only want to deal with something if it directly influences them. I've never been sexually assaulted, but that doesn't mean that as somebody who wants to do what's best for my community and the world at whole, that I shouldn't be active in ensuring that we do that, or, you know, contributing towards, you know, creating that safe environment and that brotherhood so that people feel safe to do that. So you just got to be vigilant. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that are going on in our community, whether you've been involved or a victim or not. And it's like, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our families. We owe it to our friends. We owe it to, you know, our coworkers. We owe it to everybody to create the best environment possible for all of us to thrive. And if black men, you know, can't do that, it's going to have a negative repercussion. And it's like I said in the article, that like the same masculinity that we hide behind to protect ourselves from is the same masculinity that society views as a threat. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we have to just be better at that and more mindful, and just really be more receptive. And I mean, you know, a lot of that stems from the fact that, like, as men in general, I'm not going to say black men as far as this goes, but as men in general, like, we don't have those meaningful, deep conversations. When I call my homeboys, it's, yo, you see the game? You know, hey, you know, you watching boxing? Like, we don't have like, hey, like, how you feeling? Like, how are you really doing? You know what I mean? Like, I heard you were depressed. Like, what can I do to help? Like, a lot of times we only reserve those conversations to have with women. And not only does that create an extraordinary amount of, or generate an extraordinary amount of emotional labor that women have to entail, but it reaffirms this whole strong black men facade that we hide behind. You know what I mean? And it's just like, yo, we have to do better at learning to be treating each other like human beings and learning to be receptive to our humanity.
You've given some suggestions in regards to overcoming this state. Do you have any more suggestions? Because you said earlier on you have some specific suggestions. Do you have any more suggestions that can be done to address this challenge?
I think the biggest thing we have to do is just communicate. I mean, honestly, a lot of it stems from a level of comfort and communication. And in order to establish that degree of comfort, men have to learn how to have healthier dialogues with each other. You know what I mean? You're a cool dude, but we can't just talk about sports. We can't just talk about like superfluous stuff. Like we need to, those conversations that we have no problem pillow talking with a girl with that you just met 2 days ago. These are conversations we need to be able to have with each other, with your homeboys. Like, it's okay to say like, hey man, I'm not doing so good, I'm broke, or hey, I'm, you know, having more meaningful, deep, layered conversations, I feel like is one of the best ways that we can get to that point, because through communication we have comfort, and through comfort we have vulnerability. You know what I'm saying? And people are more comfortable with doing that, and as a result, a lot of us won't feel like we have to maintain this facade of being a strong black man, or, and you know, all this other stuff, and it just creates a healthier environment for everybody.
Who will be, and I'm speaking hope and optimistic here, who is best equipped to lead this change? If men aren't doing it right now, who are like people like yourself? I hope I'm doing some of this also. Where can we look to, or who can we empower to make this change?
I think black women are best equipped to make this change, but we can't leave it to them to do it.
Right.
We have to acknowledge it ourselves and demonstrate initiative and say, look, y'all take care of everything else. Y'all bail us out every other day. For once, let us take the lead on something and say, hey, this is our problem and it's directly infecting or impacting how we treat you. So let us take initiative on that. And I think a lot of times as men in general, we get lackadaisical because we feel like, oh, a woman will take care of it or somebody else will do it. And it's something that we have to be proactive about. And as men, especially black men, like we have to be diligent and cognizant of this as well.
Do you think we're ready?
I hope we are. I think we are. I mean, I genuinely believe we are. I just think that a lot of it stems from kind of like this groupthink hive mind. Like people are so concerned about how they'll be perceived or how it will be perceived or how people will look at them or how people will talk about them. And you just got to stop worrying about other people's opinions and do what's in your best interest. You know what I'm saying? We live in this fast food, microwave, social media, information age society where people are so pressed to look, you know, worried about their facade and worrying about, you know, this perception and reputation. But you just got to be honest with yourself. It benefits everybody for us to just keep it a buck and just really get to the meat of, you know, our interpersonal interactions.
Just want to shout out, joining us live via YouTube, another great supporter of the Dr. Vibe Show, Dr. Tachi, host of one of the best live stream programs on Periscope called Mediascope, which is on every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on, hope I get it right, Facebook Live and Periscope, and 5 p.m. on Instagram Live. The best of media, tech, and pop culture. Everyone check it out because it is an outstanding conversation that she leads.
Oh,
you are a young man.
I am.
And I think I am too, but I think I'm a little bit older than you. Do you see your brothers being the agents of change when it comes to this challenge?
I do, because I make it a point. I think in the past I made it a point. Well, I think in the past I allowed my friends to pick me. And I think with maturity, I decided to pick my friends. You know what I mean? Like when you were younger, you were more worried about like being popular and being liked and making sure you had a bunch of people. But it's like the older you get, the more I would hope you want to surround yourself with people that are like-minded. And, you know, the relationships are healthy and mutually beneficial. So I definitely think that the people I surround myself with are capable of this change. And I mean, we have, quote unquote, strong black men within our circle that feel like there's certain things they can't be vulnerable with. But at the same time, a lot of my friends, like, they'll hit me up and they'll be like, hey man, like, how you feeling? How you doing? Or, you know, they'll tell me, like, like one of my homeboys, Jazz, shout out to him. Every time I see him, he tells me he loves me. And when he first did it, it kind of threw me off. Like, I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? But then I was just like, yo, like, these are the conversations that we need to be having. Like, you need to tell your homeboys you love them. There's nothing wrong with a man telling another man that he loves him. That doesn't make you gay. You know what I mean? That doesn't make you weird or soft or weak. And it's like we've been conditioned to believe that. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, good. As we start winding down the conversation, do you have, I guess I like to do this sometimes at the end of conversations, do you have any calls to action for different groups? So when it comes to Black women and this subject, what would you give as a call to action or calls to action?
I think to Black women, I would recommend, or I would ask that, you know, when it comes to racism, I tell people all the time, like, Black people can't be project managers. We can be consultants. We can't. Black folks can't fix racism. This is just an issue that we cannot fix because, one, we don't benefit from it, and two, we're not the orchestrators of it. So we can consult, we can tell you, like, hey, this is our thoughts on it, but it's like, you know, white folks have to take the lead on dismantling racism. And it's the same in a situation like this. It's like, I would ask Black women to be consultants. Don't be project managers. Don't feel like you have to carry that cross. You know what I'm saying? Like, leave it to us to really, like, you know, consult. Definitely give us your insight, your advice, your input, but don't feel like, okay, it's my responsibility. Like, let us naturally come into that role and hold us accountable to, you know, be agents for change and demonstrate that initiative and make the necessary changes within our community.
The next group in regards to this, what about those who are not Black?
I feel like this is something that affects everybody. But I mean, you know, as a man who's been for any man who's been sexually assaulted, or, you know, other men within their respective communities, I definitely, you know, the same rules apply. Like, you have to take the initiative to, you know, kind of break down these walls of silence and these false facades that, you know, we all hide behind. You got to really just, you know, put the work in. You have to be active. You have to make sure that you're having conversations, that you're creating comfort levels for everybody involved, and that, you know, we foster a collective environment for all of us to thrive and be vulnerable within, so that we all can have, you know, that healthy ecosystem that we deserve.
And finally, your message to the Black men out there who are listening and watching.
Well, to the Black men, I would just say, like, just, you know, you gotta step it up. You know what I mean? We have to step it up. It falls on us. We've created this problem, either through our actions of, you know, sexually assaulting other men, or, you know, whatever else. So it's just like, we have to definitely take initiative in holding ourselves accountable for the people that have done it, to not protect them. You know what I'm saying? To you know, let them be persecuted to the full extent of the law. To not hide behind religion as an excuse to not address certain issues and matters, like to seek out therapy, to be vigilant and diligent in these type of things, and just to, you know, foster vulnerability and communication, and just really, you know, vulnerability, and just really hit that. You know what I mean?
Just got a message here on Periscope. This is Eileen. It says, completely agrees with what you're saying. Right across the board for all races. She completely agrees with what you're sharing with us. That is fantastic. So what's your next project that you're working on outside of the podcast?
Outside of the podcast.
Any more writing pieces coming up?
Yeah, I'm working on a few different things as far as the writing thing goes. Trying to segue back into film and television, so I'm working on a script for that. Well, a couple of different things on that. You know, the podcast takes so much of my time. They're kind of synonymous at this point, but I'm going to be, I might be doing something for the NABJ here soon. I just did a panel with them last month, so I might be doing something else with that. Really just, you know, grinding and just really trying to use our platform to help other people. That's, you know, really what my focus is on. The Extraordinary Negroes isn't just about, you know, Alex and I. It's about creating a platform that everybody can benefit from. You know what I mean? Like when Black Panther came out, we were fortunate to give out 60 tickets for people to go see the movie. So just doing things like that are just, you know, well intended, and just using our platform to just really help everybody else. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to get selfish and be like, oh, I'm winning, I'm thriving, you know, let me just take care of myself. And it's like, no, this is about everybody.
Nice. Well, time has run down, Jay. Thank you. I'd like to say thank you for sharing with us. Do you have any final words or comments you'd like to provide the audience?
If you weren't doing so...
by the way, Dr. Tachi says she loves your podcast.
Oh, thank you for listening, Dr. Tachi. Yeah, just... if you haven't done so already, definitely check us out, The Extraordinary Negroes, on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, SoundCloud, anywhere you listen to shows. Definitely check us out. We're going to be doing some more. We just had a live event last week. Massive turnout, really dope. It was in LA, you know, we're just going to keep pushing. So thank you to everybody that's supporting what we're doing, and definitely check us out if you haven't done so already.
Do you have a vision of where you want the Extraordinary Negroes to go to?
Yeah, I just want to continue to grow. Just continue to grow and just continue to be in a position to help other people. Just, you know what I mean? Like, one of the biggest things people ask us is that, like, case in point, Alex and I are writers, but we barely write on our website. And people are like, why don't y'all write on your website? And it's like, because we want to use our platform to help other writers get their voices out. Because a lot of times there's a lot of writers out there that feel like, I'm good, but I don't know if I'm good enough for The Root, or I'm good enough for, you know, wherever else. So we're like, hey, we have no problem with using our site as kind of a training ground for people to kind of, I mean, you still got to have some quality, you know, you can't come at us with some garbage, but we definitely like our platform to, you know, allow people that are, you know, still kind of finding their voice through their writing story, that, you know, to kind of get in and cut their chops and get better and whatever else. So I mean, I'm just big on just helping everybody else out, man. I'm just really trying to help, you know, continue to build and continue to make a platform that benefits everybody.
I can so much relate. One of the great joys I have by doing these epic conversations is when I see people come on and they start their own thing.
That's dope.
That to me is there's at least 3 gentlemen I can testify who have been on this conversation in the past that now are starting to have their own thing going on. Actually, one of them does AM Drive on WURD out of Philadelphia every morning. So, and nice. So I fully get with what you're saying. So on that note, I'd like to say thanks for sharing with us. And all the contact information will be on the post with the replay of this epic conversation. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show, the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. If you'd like to catch replays like this via YouTube, go to your YouTube channel, put in the search engine the space dr.space VIBE space SHOW. You can catch replays of my audio epic conversations at the Dr. Vibe Show website, also Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher Play Radio, Google Play Music, and iHeartRadio. I think I may have said that right twice, but I don't mind. Also, I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching and Communications. If you'd like a complimentary 30-minute empowerment session, please touch base with me via Twitter at drvibeshow. Also email dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. You can also go to my website, click on the Contact Dr. Vibe Show at the top of the page, and you can also do it that way. I'm also a brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is Cuisine Noir Magazine. The website address is cuisinenoirmag.com. I'm also provide a service called Getting Media Coverage, where I help entrepreneurs and business people get media promotion so they can elevate their business. And finally, as I mentioned a few moments ago, you can catch me live every Friday morning at 7:20 a.m. Eastern Time on WURD, Pennsylvania's only publicly owned black radio station. I am part of a panel on a segment called The Wee Buzz with Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, and Ike Raw, where we discuss stories that made news and stories that didn't make news that should have made news. That's the week that was on Word. 4 last things before I let people go. First of all, Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. My final thing I would say is thank you to This Is Eileen for watching live via Periscope. And thank you to Dr. Tachi and JNF Enterprises watching via YouTube Live. Thank you for making an epic conversation. As I like to say, God bless, peace be well, and walk good.
Yep.
What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning The Dr. Vibe Show. I have hosted and produced over 2,000 epic conversations over the last 10 years. And what makes our conversations epic? We don't do interviews. We do conversations.